We're now recording. Okay, what I want to talk about today is the mediation process. I'm going to do it from top to bottom, bottom to top, and go through each of the stages. And this is mainly so you understand what's happening in the bits between the script. The script only covers the transitions and only covers the introductions and what have you. It doesn't actually cover what you do with parties because we can't script that. I mean, obviously, because we don't know what they're going to say, and we can't say, well, ask this question because they may not go down that road. So the missing bit is what I'm going to try and cover today.
Right, okay.
Now, firstly, let's look at mediation backwards. What is the ultimate aim of a mediation?
To get an understanding between two parties about each of their position and try to put them in each other's shoes so they can make a decision on how they're going to move forward.
That's sort of right. The ultimate aim of a mediation is to come to an agreement which is acceptable to both parties. It may not be perfect, but they can live with it, that they can actually do it and they're committed to it, and it addresses the issues which were raised during the mediation. That's the ultimate aim of the mediation, is to get that agreement which is workable, sustainable, and they want to achieve. Now, to get that, we need options. And like the final result, these options have to be acceptable, something they can commit to, and will address the issues of the mediation. So unless we have all these options, we won't get the agreement.
Yep.
Make sense?
Yep.
Cool. To get the options, the only way to get decent options is when both parties fully understand the other party's point of view and their rationale, reasons, and whys. They may not agree with what that party is saying, but they've got to be able to understand that party.
Yep.
Because if I don't understand what you're talking about, my option will be I get 100%, you get nothing, because I just don't know what you want.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So when I understand exactly what you want and why you want it, then I'll start putting forward options which are, maybe in line with you a little bit, but in line with myself as well. And from that, we can negotiate and get some sort of resolution. Now, to get the options, to get the full understanding of each other, we need to be able to have the parties, talking to each other to understand that. But it's got to be totally related to why they're there on the day. It's not related to, their view of the AFL or whatever. It's their views of the issues at hand, which means that the agenda we put together must be 100% spot on and specific to their requirements. If we have a fluffy agenda, we'll have fluffy outcomes and may not even address the core issues. So we've got to have an agenda which is spot on. And you were saying?
I know, and that's why the agenda can't be long-winded, and it can't be too many of them to get to the point.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, to get an agenda which is specific and meets their requirements, we develop that during the parties' opening statements. So we question, we summarise, we get a clear understanding of what the issues are, so we can then build the agenda. And that's the way we do that. So let's run the thing forward rather than backwards. Excuse me. You do your opening statements. They agree to whatever it is because they're trying to get it sorted out. They then do their opening statements. Now, the way I do it, there's more than one way you can do this. There's no exact correct answer. But I get the people to do issue by issue, not give a full, war and peace about the problems. I say to them, one issue at a time, can you tell us what's brought us here today? And let's say it's a fence issue for argument's sake, and the lighting one, that particular neighbourhood 2 scenario, whatever it is. It would be, look, they've got these floodlights there and they're shining in the bedroom and causing all sorts of issues for me. Okay, now you ask 1 or 2 questions on that issue, like how long has this been happening for? How often does it happen that light comes in the window? And there's two questions anyway you can at least ask.
Mm-hmm.
And then you summarise back to them in your own language what you've heard.
Mm-hmm.
So what I've heard is that basically approximately 6 months ago when the lights were first put up, when people go down the driveway, the lights automatically light up and it shines into your bedroom window, and the light is so bright that it wakes you up if you're asleep, or if you're trying to sleep, you can't sleep. Would that be a fair statement?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's
Yes.
exactly what I said. Yeah, that's exactly right. Cool. Now, at this point, what I'll do is I'll have a pad and I'll have a line down the middle with, party 1 and party 2 at the top. And on the party 1 side, I'll put their security lights. Because I've now identified an agenda item. Because I've asked the questions, I've summarised it back, I've now got a clear understanding of what that problem is, so I can put a 1 or 2 word, very, very succinct agenda item down.
That's on each agenda item.
Yeah, and I do this for each issue that they have. Okay, what's the next issue? Or any more issues? Oh, yeah. They built this unit against the fence line, and it's replaced the fence, and it's really ugly and terrible. Okay. So when was this unit put in there? Oh, about 6 months ago, the same time the lights were put up. Okay. In your opinion, why is it ugly? Because I like to define what the ugly is. Oh, well, they didn't come and finish it off because I wouldn't let them come in because they were tromping down the flowers and the dog could get out. Okay. So about 6 months ago again, when the unit was built, the tradesmen tried to access the premises, but you didn't let them because of damage to plants and risk to your puppy. Is that correct? Yeah, that's good. Okay. So you put down an agenda item like, ugly fence or something like that.
Yeah. Yep.
Any more issues? And you go through each issue, you question, summarise, put the agenda item down and keep moving. Now, you must ask the questions. You don't assume you know the answer, because they're telling you may not be 100% correct. It might be they're giving you their view of the world, their paradigm of what's happening, which, everyone has a different view of the same thing. So you've got to make sure you understand clearly what the problem is, and that's why we ask the questions. And then we summarise it back. Now, summarising does 3 things. The first thing it does, it ensures that we have a clear understanding of what the issue is. The second thing it does, it acknowledges the person who's saying it, because often I've had in mediation, real mediation, where they say, oh my God, someone's finally got it.
Yep.
Because, no one really understands where they're coming from. And the third thing is the fact that because I'm now reiterating it in my language, the other party may hear it for the first time.
Yes, yes.
Because all they're hearing up until then is, wah, 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 wah.
Yep.
And even the mediation, that's all they hear. But when I say it, it's like they're listening to what I'm saying very carefully. They might go, oh, I never knew that. Those lights, yeah, that's a bit of a problem, yeah. I would hate it happen to me, yeah. So get a bit of an understanding, hopefully, to what the other person's issue is. Now, during this stage, we can't bring in any new information. If we bring in any information, it can be considered biased or giving an opinion or any of these sort of things. So we're not allowed to do that. So the way we question is, in this stage, is we use the 5 W's, what, why, when, where, and how ends with a W in case you're curious, on whatever keyword they've used. Like, going off to a different thing, like in a parenting thing, it could be, I don't trust him. Well, why don't you trust him? What would it take to trust him? When would you know you could trust him? So we're bringing in their keyword and we're Wing it. So we're not bringing in any more information.
Yep.
Now, it gets a bit tricky when people say things like, oh, they've dumped this computer on the desk and, I don't know how to use it, So we've got to question it. And one of the questions we don't ask is, have you had training? Because that's sort of suggesting that they need training. That's sort of like advice to a certain degree. So we'd ask questions like, well, okay, when was the computer put on your desk? Oh, 6 months ago. Okay. What do you think needs to happen so you can use it to the requirements of the company? Oh, yeah, maybe get some training or something. Well, that's a great idea. They've brought it up. You can now explore training if you wish to.
Mm-hmm.
But if they don't bring it up, bringing in new staff is not good in a mediation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we ask questions to get the answers we want. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what would it take for you to be able to use the computer to the satisfaction of the company? Oh, well, the obvious answer is, don't know how to use it. So to be training or showing how to use it. But you can paraphrase showing how to use it to training. That's not a big leap. So you're asking questions to get the answers you want. Now, you go through the one party. You go through first issue, question, summarise, agenda point. More issues? Yep. Question, summarise, agenda point. You just do this all the way down. Then when they're finished, you thank both parties. You say thank you for being honest with the information. You thank the other party for not interrupting. Then, because you thank one, you've got to thank the other. Now, party two, without answering party one, what brought you here today, one issue at a time? And you do the exact same thing for the other party. Now, by then, you've got a clear understanding and the skeleton of an agenda.
Yep.
Now, looking at the agenda document, the piece of paper in front of you, that skeleton with a line down the middle and all their issues either side, you will find that quite a number of them are the same for both parties. Quite often.
And they're approaching it from a different way.
Yeah. So you might have communication for one and communication for the other one as an issue, or you draw a line matching those two together. That's an agenda item.
Yep.
The second one might be about the fence, and the other person's got a complaint about the fence for a different issue. Where you draw a line between them. That's the fence. That's another agenda item. You see how we're building the agenda?
Yep.
Commonality is definitely an agenda item. Which will then leave us with a few things which don't fit the thing because they're only one-sided. What you do then is just broaden the agenda items a little bit so they can be encompassed. And there, my friend, is a perfect agenda which matches their requirements, why they're here, because they've told you that, they've gone through their list, you've checked it off, there's your perfect agenda. Does that make sense?
Yep. Because it's what you're doing is you're bringing to the fore each of their issues, but prior to this, they've been looking at from their point of view on what we're doing as mediators, facilitating some form of commonality, which is the agenda, which we can then start talking to.
Well, that's what we're doing. We're listening to what they're saying very carefully. We're asking questions, we're summarising to make sure we've got it right. And we make an agenda point. And that's method one. Method two is to let them go through all the issues and ask them questions and summarise back.
Yep.
That requires you taking lots of notes or having a very good memory. My method doesn't require notes or memory.
Right.
The third way of doing it is to listen to all of party one, listen to all of party two, then ask party one and two questions and summarise it back to the whole lot. That requires even a bigger memory or a lot more notes. Now, when you've got to rely on your memory or notes to try and do things in mediation, as you're writing notes, you're not listening to the person. So you really do need to actually talk to the person and understand where they're at. That's why I like my method, which is the first method. But if you like number two better or number three better, that's cool. They're all valid. That's what your personal preference becomes, how you wish to do it.
I used key points and tried with regards to memory, but key points and writing those key points down, because then that triggers in all those aspects of the people talking.
Well, then you've got to make sure you ask questions on all those key points.
Yep.
So you understand it properly and then summarise it back so that you've got a full understanding that's been verified by that particular party.
Yep.
That takes a lot more work. The work comes very, very, a lot easier. I'm pushing my own barrow here, but it's a personal choice, it really is. I push my barrow because you're doing it one thing at a time. You're doing the question, you're doing the summarise, and you're getting the agenda point. You don't remember anything more about that. You can move on to the next one. You're not taxing yourself, and you're only writing 2 words down for each agenda item, so you're not being distracted from the conversation. That's why I do it that way. I find it's a lot easier and more succinct. But as I said, there's no correct way on this.
Mm-hmm.
That's whatever's the best style for you, because your mediation, you're the mediator.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do what is best that you think you can do. So if that's method 2 or method 3, then so be it.
Mm-hmm.
You won't get any marks against you if you do any of the 3 methods.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the assessment's concerned, they all meet the criteria. Questioning, summarising. That's in the opening statements, the 2 things you have to do. Question and summarise. Because it's on the assessment sheet. Did the mediator summarise? If the answer is no, you don't get a tick there, you get a cross there.
Right, okay.
So you have to summarise and you have to ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
So which method you use is totally up to you.
Right.
I'm sort of the lazy mediator. I prefer to do it so there's not a high cognitive load on me, so I can pay attention to the people and their body language, microfacials, tone, all this sort of stuff, so I can stay on top of the situation. Situational awareness, I think, is what you call it. Okay, so now we've got the agenda. They've finished talking. We thank them once again for being open and not interrupting and all the rest of it. Now we say we're going to put the agenda up. Now, you do this in your Word document if you're doing it online, or you do it in the whiteboard if it's in an office or projector or whatever you've got, whatever the tools you've got. With the whiteboard, you do have to be very, very careful, because as soon as you turn your back to the audience, you may lose rapport very quickly. So try and stay side on, so you're sort of facing them as you're writing. Don't just turn your back and pretend they're not there while you write it up, because if they start, playing up at all, then your rapport and your authority in the room is sort of minimised. What I prefer to do is have a laptop or something and a Word document, big things, and just spin it around so I can see it.
Right.
So I'm still facing them the whole time. And when they see it, they can go through it. Now, what you do with the agenda is you write it all up based on those little marrying up of what we did before. You then display it to the parties. And what I do is I explain the genealogy of each of the agenda items. I do this because it helps build rapport and also stops them breaking rapport at this point in time, because we don't want to have, dumb questions per se. And I'll explain that in a minute. So what I'll do is I'll say, okay, the first agenda item here is the security lighting. Now, you both mentioned during your opening statements this is a concern for you, and that's why I've put this up as the agenda item. The second one is the finish of the fence or the wall. You've both explained your sides on this and both concerned about this. That's why it's a second agenda item. So if you tell them where they said it here and what have you, maybe even give it a bit of a quote if you could from memory. You don't have to. This helps them understand where it came from and why it's there. If you just go, here's the agenda, what do you think? It'll be why security lighting there? You've got to say, oh, because both of you mentioned it and that's why it's put there. But they're going, why is that there? Is breaking rapport.
Right.
So you don't want to do that. So what you say is, you both spoke about it, and I think party one you said how it's inconveniencing your sleeping patterns, and party two you mentioned that whatever the reason they gave was.
Age parent and security.
That's why it's put there, and you'll see them both go, oh yeah.
Yeah.
This nodding is maintaining rapport. When they go, why? That's breaking rapport. Okay. And rapport is a big thing in mediation. So you go through all the agenda items, you say, okay, the first thing after you've gone through them all is say, have I missed anything? Because we're human. We may have missed something. Or put a wrong emphasis on something or whatever. So then we discuss, what's missed, and party A might say, oh, yeah, you forgot to put down that, I don't know. Something stupid. And you go, okay, how would you like this worded? And you could work out how they'd like the agenda put down, that item put down. Then you say to the other party, So, Bob, what do you think of this as an agenda item?
In neighbour 2, it could have been, oh, my dog keeps getting out. But
Because of their whatever, yeah.
whatever.
So what do you think of this as an agenda item, Bob, the other party, for argument's sake?
Yeah, George.
And they'll go, oh, yes, good, bad, or whatever. And if they say, oh, I don't see this being, it should be there, no, that's irrelevant. Well, why is it irrelevant? Okay, then go back to the other one and say, well, look, George thinks it's a bit irrelevant. How about we shuffle it up a little bit and broaden this one a little bit so I can fit in there?
Or incorporate it as part of the fence issue.
Yeah.
Because, you know, and that way you're getting, oh, it's still there because the dog's getting out, and the dog's getting out because of the fence. But you keep the agenda items to really small, so we're not going off, because time is also of the essence in this as well.
Correct. So now we've got the agenda.
Yep.
Cool. We've got all the bits and pieces on the board. We've got the 2 or 3 items. We go, fantastic, isn't that great? Now, what order would you like to discuss these in? Now, discuss is a key word here. Never say what order is it important to you in. If you say the word important, what's important to me might be, for argument's sake, that you shut up and don't say anything more and go away. And what's important to the other person could be the lights drowning them out every night so they can't sleep. Now, then you'll have an argument happening between the two of them to what's more important. And there's a no-win there. There's a no-win. And they'll start to de-escalate into conflict right in front of your eyes, because this is more important than that. And there'll be a real fight over it. So that's why we use the word discuss, because discuss is, well, look, you know, what would you like to discuss? And it really makes no difference, because we will address all these issues. It's just so we can move forward with a sequence. And then someone will go, oh, the way it is fine. Or another person might go, oh, yeah, well, have him move 2 to 1 and that'll be fine. What do you think, the other party? Yeah, that's cool. Right, do the change. Done. Now, with a mediation, 90% of the time, communication is going to be one of the issues. Because if they could communicate, they wouldn't need us to do it.
That's where the breakdown has been.
Yeah, so 90% of the time, not always, there are times when specific issues they're talking about in communications they just can't agree. Mainly workplace ones like this, or marriage ones. But so communication is always going to be there. Now, putting communication up as the item is a bit old hat, been there, done that, all the rest of it, and doesn't really mean much to people. Excuse me, I think I'm getting over a flu or something, or getting a flu, whatever's, you know, worse.
Yeah.
Mulrooney's Law, I think they call it. That is, Murphy was an optimist. Oh, excuse me. Maybe I should get a cold drink, that might help. Anyway, so what order would you like to discuss these in? And once you get the order sorted out, you can then proceed to the next stage. But before you proceed to the next stage, you can make a big point, and this is worth doing, of, hang on half a sec, I'll get rid of this phone call. Done. Make a big point of saying something like, isn't this fantastic? We've got an agreement. See, we can come to an agreement here. Now, congratulate them on coming to an agreement, because that sets them in the mood to come to more agreements. It's the old yes ladder. Do you know the yes ladder? Salesmen do it all the time. They get, like, pretend to
overcoming objections.
Well, not overcoming objections so much. The yes ladder is you get the people to agree to small things, and they get used to saying yes. Then you hit them with the big thing, and they go yes, and they go, oh, what does I say yes? It's a very old selling thing, which is interesting. So we're setting up a yes ladder here, basically. So they've got an agreement happening. They can see they can agree. So it puts them in a better mind, and better mood, and what have you, to continue this happening. Now, so far in the mediation, I've mentioned a lot about rapport with the client. It's essential that you do build that rapport with the client. Now, the reason it's essential for it, if the clients feel at all threatened by the mediator, or, you know, like, my God, that mediator's rude or arrogant or whatever, then they're less likely to cooperate, because they'll start digging in against the mediator. So the old saying is you catch more flies with honey.
Mm-hmm.
And in mediation, that's also true.
Mm-hmm.
So we use our voice and our tone and our pace, the canter of our voice, to try and manage the room professionally with a bit of authority so that we can jump in on things when they're wrong, but we don't do it in such a way that causes issues. So when I'm mediating, I'm normally talking, "Hi, my name is Ken Speakman." I've just lowered it that little bit.
Yep.
It's still in my normal vocal range, but it's the bottom end of it because a lower tone builds more trust. Like, "Hi, my name is Ken Speakman. I'm a nationally accredited mediator." Versus, "Hi, I'm Ken. I'm a nationally accredited mediator." Which one would you trust? That's an extreme example, but even just that bit there is enough to cause a bit of like, but down here, that's more like a soothing, more wishing to trust sort of tone. And we also put pregnant pauses in wherever possible. So we go things like, "Hi, my name is Ken Speakman," little pause.
Yeah.
"I'm a nationally accredited mediator," little pause. "Mediation's an informal process, so you can call me Ken," little pause. We put these little pauses in because the people in the room are very anxious and most likely their sympathetic nervous system's kicking in. They've got a dry mouth. They're feeling like they're about to die any second. Their whole life's dependent on what happens here, and they're in a bad way. So by putting the pauses in, it gives them time to catch up with what you're saying. So, "Hi, my name is Ken Speakman. I'm a nationally accredited mediator, and as mediation informal process, you can call me Ken." Versus, "Hi, I'm Ken Speakman, mediation informal process, and as such, you can call me Ken." They won't hear a word of that because it's just one big string of words, and by the time they realise what's happened, they've forgotten half of it. So you put the pauses in, you make it a bit softer, and you talk to the people. With video mediation, when I say talk to the people, what you do is on your screen, you have a person. Look them in the eyes when you talk to them and go, "Hi, Ken, how's it going?" If you look at the camera, you go, "Hi, Ken, how's it going?" You're talking at the people. So you use this sort of trick yourself by looking at the person and talking to them. And that comes across a lot more professional. It comes a lot more calm and a lot more controlled. Now, by us doing this, we're trying to encourage them to match us. You've heard of matching and mirroring? Well, we're setting the pace and trying to get them to match us. If they match us, they will calm down, they will cool down, and they will instantly start building rapport. That's what we need. That's why rapport is very, very important. Any questions on rapport?
No. It's and I think your key word about pausing gives them time to digest what you've just done, which makes them feel comfortable.
Yeah. It's like people say to me, "I've got a great memory for faces, but a shocking memory for names." And I go, "That's easy to fix. When you meet someone for the first time, stick your hand out, go, 'Hi, I'm Ken, you are?'" They're too busy trying to figure out what the hell's happening. They'll forget the Ken bit and go, "Oh, it's Bob." And you go, "Hi, Bob, how are you today? What brought you here, Bob?" Use the name a couple of times and instantly you remember it. In the meantime, they're still trying to figure out what did he say his name was again. If you're the person caught in the back foot, which that's why people are, they're caught in the back foot, they're going, "Oh, yeah, my name's Ken." "Oh, what's his name?" "I forget," because they weren't expecting it. So the way to remember names is, just get in first. But here, names are very important. Never refer to the parties as the parties or the other party or him or her. Always use the name. "Hi, Bob. How's it going? Betty, how are you?" Now, Betty, can you explain to Bob? Because it makes it more personal. If you go, "Betty, can you explain to the other party?" That's like cold, sterile, and you're going to get that sort of response out of that person. So by using names correctly, and you do use them, you help build the rapport between the parties as well as with yourself. And if you're doing a family mediation, there's children involved, never refer to them as the children, always use their names. It gets awkward if you've got 10 children, but usually they only have 1 or 2 kids. So, you know. So, Betty, can you explain to me why little Andrew and Alicia are having these issues?
Mm-hmm.
You put the names to it because people are proud of their children. They're the apple of their eye. They're their reason for being. And by using the name, it builds that, like, yeah, that's my kid, rather than, and tell me about the children. I mean, the children are, you know, any little thing which is, you know, not growing up. So it helps personalise it. Use names where you can.
It's creating that mental picture, as they keep saying. You know, you say a child, which one? But you mentioned Bob or Mary. They see a picture, that flash of Mary and Bob comes into their mind, because they're the key, and that's what we're here for.
Exactly. So use names. Never use children, other parties. Explain to him what you're doing here. No, explain to Bob why you're here. Make sure that you identify people as being individuals, and people love their name more than anything else. That's the one thing you can't take from a person is their name. You can take their honour, you can take their goods and assets, you can take everything, but you can't take a person's name. That's very important to a lot of people. So use names where possible. And just hang on half a second, I'm going to pause this. Yeah, thanks for a small break. I needed a drink.
It's okay.
Okay, so that's the report bit. So we've got the agenda. Now we're going to move into the exploration phase of the mediation.
And Ken, one of the things, exploration and then sliding into the private session.
Yep.
It's that transition between getting them both to understand and then saying, whoa, you know, now not whoa, but in that term, but I use the word segue. You know, we're now going to segue into that private session that I was talking about. This is that questioning part of that, the exploration. It's, you know, I think you said the other day at about this time, the clock should be round about an hour, I think you were saying. Is that correct?
Maybe a bit before, about an hour into the mediation, yeah.
Yep. And then we say, right, you know, and then let's the segue, and this is the critical bit. This is the bit that this is the, you know, when I say critical bit, this is where the empathy's got to start happening.
That's correct. The exploration is all about the empathy side, as you said. Now, to transition into the explorations, like, you know, make a bit of a joke out of it. Look, I've been speaking long enough now, and they're all going, yeah. It's your turn. That's what the opening statements are. But now to go from agenda into the exploration is a little bit different. It is, okay, now we've got the agenda. We'll discuss these one issue at a time in the order you selected. Now you've got to pick on who goes first here. And you pick on the person who is the weak party in the room. I don't mean weak by argument. I don't mean weak by, you know, bodybuilder versus a weed. I mean weak by personality in the room. So the person who's a bit of a shy wallflower, they're the ones you pick to go first. Now the reason we do that is if you let the alpha go first, because they're so dominant, they can actually shut down the weaker party. And when the weaker party's time to talk, they'll go, yeah, I've got nothing really to say. It can happen. It doesn't happen often, but it can happen. But if you give the weaker party the first talk or the first go, and they realise that they haven't been, you know, taken out the back and beat up, or, you know, they've been listened to, and if the other person tries to interrupt, the mediator, you know, stops that from happening, and they're safe, then they'll continue to have their voice. They'll keep talking. They will bring up more issues. They'll engage in the process. If you let the alpha start, it's quite possible you can shut the process down.
Now,
it's possible.
In the workplace where we've got Alicia and Andrew, you know, he's a factory manager and she believes she's being undermined.
Yep.
She's the weaker party from what I understand it to be.
Yeah, well, she doesn't have that much power in the company, number one, because she's only new to it and he's been there for 20 odd years. So there's that sort of implied strength.
Yep.
And also he's a bit more dominating in his presentation. He comes in like, you know, like I've been doing 20 years, this is where it happens, you know, who's this
Oh,
person?
she's 16. She's a smart aleck little thing. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
So
Okay.
he's got this sort of like shut down sort of tone. So you let Alicia go first in that situation. Now, if you make a mistake and you pick the wrong person, because the little meek person comes out and turns out to be a real fire dragon, you know, you go, holy crap, I picked the wrong one. The next gender item, you pick the other one. Okay, you go first, please. You can swap them if you need to.
Yep.
But the idea, you come out into this and you go, okay, with a gender item number 1, which could be the lights, right? Who's the weaker party there? It's Manny, and not Manny. Who are the parties again?
It's George and Sylvia.
Okay, you might pick on Sylvia here as being the weaker party.
Yep.
I would. In this scenario, I pick on Sylvia. So Sylvia, can you explain to George for me, please? Now, speaking directly to him, not to me, why the lights are such an issue to you and what effect they're having on you. So I want her to get her feelings and her rationale across to George. Now, George can look at this and accept it or not accept it. It's irrelevant, but he needs to understand why it's an issue for Sylvia. Then if she stops her little talk and he doesn't respond, you say, okay, George, you've now listened to Sylvia on this. Can you give me your view, not me, sorry, can you give Sylvia, let her know why the lights are important to you and why they've got to be set up the way they are. You want her to now understand why he's doing what he's doing. We want this understanding of the issues. I don't care at this point in time whether the lights are valid or not valid. I want them both to understand each other's point of view, how it's affecting them and why it's affecting them.
With regards to each of the, why is it important to you? You've asked a question, they answer. What I'm calling the QAS factor: question, answer, summarize. Do you do that to every one of those questions, Ken?
No.
Without being laborious?
No, you don't. You do the question, summary, agenda only in the opening statements. You don't do it here.
Okay.
You can ask questions here. Now, if for argument's sake, Sylvia's going, oh yes, and lights are causing all this problems, yada, 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 and George goes, I wasn't aware of that, Sylvia. Don't jump on George and tell him to shut up because he can't interrupt. If you're having a polite conversation, where they're not actually aggressive or trying to, jump on top of each other, let it continue. Because this is, we're rebuilding the communication with them. If you jump on a person who's saying, oh, don't do that, we're agreed not to interrupt and all the rest of it, that person feels like disconnected from the mediation then. So allow them to discuss, but make sure they're discussing in a forward motion. And it's not rude or arrogant or threatening or any of this sort of stuff. The 3 times you'll jump in are when it becomes aggressive. Because we want to calm the room down again because we don't want it going out of control. Second time we'll jump in is if they go off on some weird tangent which has got nothing to do with the agenda item. We'll now have to jump in to pull them back into this agenda item.
So in other words, if they're talking about a fence, she starts talking about the dog. No, we're talking about the fence.
Well, the dog and the fence is still connected, but if they start talking about the barbecue last year.
Yep, okay, yep.
And the smoke going over the fence, well, look, that's not an agenda item. We're talking about the fence here. Let's continue with the fence. Let's stay focused. And the third thing is if they get stuck in the past. They get stuck in the past. Oh, yeah, well, when the builders were putting the fence up, they were doing all sorts of nasty things, and you won't get off that.
Yep.
We need to say, look, we can't unring the bell. That's my favourite saying. We're here to see what we can do to resolve these issues. So let's bring it to now and how we can move forward together. And that will bring them back into the current with future focus. The other 3 times we'll jump in and interrupt. If they're having a conversation and it's productive, let it continue. If it starts becoming unproductive, you can just jump in and go, excuse me for just jumping in here for a sec. You're doing such a great job of discussing. This is really good. I'd like to see this. And whatever point you wish to make here, like a question you might have, which you think would be relevant, You can go, Sylvia, you'd like to explain to George whatever the new thing is, which can refocus them into what you want to talk about. If they're talking about a problem or an issue and they're getting nowhere fast and just becoming circular, the way you handle that's quite simple. You say, well, okay, I think we're getting a bit circular here, or I think we're going in circles, whatever you want to call it. We might shelve this for the time being. We'll come back to it. Let's look at the second agenda item now. Okay, George, I'd like to explain to Sylvia why this happened, you know, yada, yada, yada. Same as before. You've got to elicit feelings, reasons, rationales, and the whys. And off you go on the second item. And you can bounce around the items backwards and forwards if you want to. But remember, you only got 90 minutes for this, so you can't do too many bounces around. But they do get stuck, you can change it, and you may or may not come back to it. Now, overarching the exploration and the private sessions is the phase called option generation. I don't push option generation in the exploration phase. If they come up with options, I'll go through it with them and help them with it, but I won't push for options at that point.
But you note them for future reference.
If they come up with an option, I'll help them explore it a bit, and I'll make a note for the agreement stage later. But I'm not going to push for options here, because if you push for an option, it might be too early and the person may not be comfortable coming out with an option at that point.
Ken, with regard to with option, an option could be a positional statement. In the wills role play, no stuffer. You know, I want to go to, if she doesn't agree, we're going to go to court. You know, you get a positional statement, right? And that is an option for them. Now you are there, it's their gig, not yours, right?
But you control the room, you own the room.
Appreciate that. Now, at what point a person gets positional, and this is important, because like yesterday or the day before at VCAT, I got a positional statement and I wasn't going to budge, and I brought in the Royal Commission, and that scared the bejesus out of them, and it changed the direction of the hearing. So a person may be positional, and it could wind up the mediation very quickly, because the other way they know stuff, and I'm not going to. Can you understand where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
How do you, without telling them, talk them through coming up with unpositionalizing that positional statement, because you know it's not going to reach in and it's just going to create more. Because coming back a bit, in George and Sylvia in Neighbours 2, when I was having the mediation with Peter, and I was trying not to bring up old, you know, I can't unring the bell, but Peter says sometimes you've got to get into them so they understand what they've created, so you can sort of come back from it. And I'm sort of a little bit confused. I like leaving sleeping dogs lie, because
no, you don't. Whatever the agenda items are which are discussed during the opening statements, you don't let them sleeping dogs lie. You have to discuss them. You have to talk about them. It's not for you to decide what's important or not. It's up for the clients to decide what's important or not. We are here to facilitate the conversation, not give advice, give an opinion, or try and manipulate it.
That's right. Yep. No, that's fine. Yep.
So if we say, oh, let's let sleeping dogs lie on that one, well, that could be the core to everything. And unless that's resolved, everything else will just fall over in time.
Yeah, right.
Because the core was never, ever done. That's why, remember I said you've got to have a very succinct and accurate, specific agenda. Because if you don't address the issues, then what happens is you're talking nothing but fluff. And you might all agree on the fluff stuff, but the core issue is still outstanding and it will fail. It won't stand the test of time. So if a person says, well, look, I really hate it the way he, you know, keeps saying, you know, go back to the Philippines or whatever.
Yep.
That to that person is an important issue. You can't say, oh, let's just push this under the table because it's racial and we don't want to address it. It has to be addressed. You can't just duck shove things because you find it awkward. If you've got that sort of investment in the mediation, then you're biased about who's who in the zoo, and the mediation will fail because of the bias.
Yep. Okay. Yep.
If you think you know the answer to their solution and you manipulate it and maneuver them to that answer, I can just about guarantee you it will fail every time.
Right.
Because that's not where they want to go.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll resist you all the way, and eventually the mediator becomes very belligerent about it and it just falls over. Mm-hmm. You haven't lived in their shoes. You don't know the full story. All you've got is this little snippet from their life. Mm-hmm. We haven't lived in their shoes. We don't know everything behind it. We can't make those assumptions. Mm-hmm. It's a trap for young players. It really is, to think you know better than the parties. Mm-hmm. And they have to agree to it. We can't put the answers up. They've got to come up with their own answers. And unless the answers address the issues, nothing will be achieved. Mm-hmm. Now, to answer your question, how do you go from positions to interests? Mm-hmm. Well, the process I'm explaining to you does that. Mm-hmm. Because when you understand each other's viewpoint and why it's important to that person and how it's an issue and all the wonderful W's on that issue, when I understand all that about the other party, then anything I come up with, I'll try and accommodate where possible to make it look that I'm trying, you know. So I won't become so positional. And in the private sessions, if they are very positional, you can break it down into interests there and then bring that back into the mediation, or they can. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's the next stage. So you go through the exploration, getting all the hows and, you know, why it's an issue to me and so they understand each other's point of view. Once they understand each other's point of view, as I said, they may not agree with it, but at least they understand the point of view. Mm-hmm. Once you've done all the agenda items, not half of them, but all of them, now is a perfect time for a private session. Mm-hmm. A private session will have a little chat with each one of you individually. It'll be confidential between that person and myself. And nothing that's said in this mediation I can bring back, but you can if you wish. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Who would like to go first?
Yep. Now, in this instance, will you follow the same sequence with regards to Alicia, the weaker party? Would you?
No. Who would like to go first?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Not you pick. No. Mm-hmm. The only time you pick is the exploration and when you come out of the private sessions in negotiation. It's only that little bit that you pick who goes first. The rest of the time, who wants to go first? Opening statements, who wants to go first? Private sessions, who wants to go first? Exploration, Alicia, you go first. Agreement or negotiation, Alicia, whatever.
And would you, if you've got this standoff, and you have to choose who has to go first. I'm not going to be. I'm not going to try to direct one way or the other. Is that the way to approach it?
Well, I'm a little bit softer on that. I'll use silence. It's amazing how 10 seconds of silence seems like.
Yeah.
And one of them will probably go, well, I'll go first then. But the reason we ask, there's several reasons why we ask who wants to go first in the private sessions. Now, this is one reason, and I'm very conscious of this reason, is that one of the parties sitting there may be really busting to go to the toilet.
Yeah. Right.
And if you say, you sit here and talk while the other one has a 10-minute break,
yeah,
that's not going to be really good for that person having to sit there with their legs crossed going, holy crap, I'm about to die.
Yeah, okay, I understand where you're coming from.
So you give them a choice, and the person's really busting to go, they'll go something like, oh, look, I've got to do something really urgent. Can I leave first and you do first the other person? Is that okay with you? Yeah, no worries. Okay, let's do it. Bang, off you go for 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. And they'll be skipping down the hallway real quickly. You give them that option so they can do that. Mm-hmm. If you don't, it's basically torturing the person if you choose the wrong person. Mm-hmm. But also, it helps you to figure out how the negotiation styles are working as well. Yeah. You know, if they start, amping on that, you can figure out who the power person is more accurately and all this sort of stuff. So it comes in handy. So you go into the private sessions. You've already mentioned confidentiality overarching before you started them. Mm-hmm. First thing you say is, just like to remind you, the session's confidential. Nothing we talk about I can take back, but you can if you wish. Mm-hmm. There's the confidentiality covered. Then the next words out of your mouth are, and how's the mediation going for you so far? and you do it with that softer voice. You do it with concern. You look them in the eye when you say it. And how's the mediation going for you so far? Because what that does is amazing, the transformation it makes. Firstly, they know what's being said here is confidential because you just reminded them a second time. And now he's really concerned how I'm going. They're more likely now to open up to you because that's building this trust thing. The rapport and trust is being now once again amplified. And they're more likely to open up. So they'll say, oh yeah, yada, yada, yada. And okay, without sounding too simplistic, you deal with the trash. Once that's all finished, the rest of the private session is one of two things. In a typical mediation, there's not many options on the table, and we're nowhere near getting a resolution yet. So that particular one, we then get stuck into option generation. Really stuck into it. Private session, option generation. Now look, Sylvia, you heard what George said about the lights and needing security for the mum and what have you. Now, considering this, how do you see a solution working for you? Make them realise the other person's argument. And how do you see that solution? How do you see a solution working for you? Well, maybe they could reposition the light so it doesn't shine in the bedroom but still shows the driveway. Well, that's a great idea. We're going to take that back to the mediation.
Yep, okay. And they've got to take it back.
They've got to take it back. And you never take notes in a private session.
Right.
If you take notes in a private session, that's a cross on the evaluation sheet, by the way.
Right.
It's one of the marking criteria. So be very careful. Make sure your pen's down when you're doing a private session. If they see you going like, you know, yeah, it's a big cross in that part of the thing.
Okay.
So pens down in private sessions. Now, you've got to keep the times roughly equal. When I say roughly equal, you know, 8 minutes each, who cares about the seconds?
Yeah, okay.
If one's 8:55 and the other's 8:01, that's fine, roughly equal. You know, I'm not going to split hairs over 1 second difference. You've got to keep them roughly equal. Now, the reason for this is if you give one too long and the other too little,
you could be.
It's a bias. Yeah, it's a bias. So how do you do it when a person comes in, you go, so how's it going for you? Say, oh, pretty good. Okay, how do you see the solutions? I've got no idea.
Yep.
What do you talk about now? You've got a 30-second private session. And you know the other one's going to talk the leg off a donkey.
Yep.
You can't give them 30 seconds. How do you fix this? It's simple. You then go back to the agenda items with them. Say, okay, agenda item number 1, you heard what so-and-so said about that. Now, you must have some ideas of what might be a solution which would be acceptable to yourself.
But they normally use keywords, and my entree, what was your take on, you know, a computer system or the lights or the dog or the fence? Or
I don't question them on that.
No?
I might do that to spread the time out to make it a 10-minute private session. If it's finished in 30 seconds, I might do that to pull it out. But my focus is, okay, Sylvia, you heard what George said about the security for the driveway and what have you for his elderly mother so she can negotiate to the house. Now, taking that into account and the fact that your bedroom's now been lit up, you know, as you said, and makes it very difficult to sleep, what solutions can you see that might be appropriate to address both? Look for solutions at this point. And she might come up and say, well, change the wattage a bit lower so she can still see, but it's not like a searchlight out of World War II or something. Or maybe readjust them so they're not shining in the bedroom, but just down the driveway, and it covers that better. I don't know. Maybe putting a little bit of tin or something up so it won't go into the house, but it still shines down the driveway, if you know what I mean. Whatever the solutions are, that's a great solution. You thought about taking this back. Then the next issue, okay, the wall looks untidy. How do you see that being solved? Because you heard from George that, you know, he spent so much money, he's basically broken it, doesn't have, you know, much to spend to fix it. That's one of the things that they always say. So what do you see a way of fixing it? Oh, well, maybe we can just, you know, put a little bit of render or something over it, or maybe put a trellis up and put some plants on it or something. They sound like two great ideas. Like to take that back to George. You know, these sort of, you always look for the solutions here. Don't tell me what they said about it, because they did that in the exploration. You've already done it. Just repeating and wasting time. You only waste time in the private sessions to pad it, so you've got enough time for the other person. So that's reason one.
So with regards to generating options, those key questions, Ken, you know, what's important to you, you know, your take on item one, what did you think about what they said about?
Not what they think about. No, it's you become more directive here. It's things like, okay, you heard what Georgia said about the lights. Now, what do you see as a way of fixing the problem? What options do you see which will fix your problem? You can take the lights down, but that then causes a security issue for his mum. How else can we fix the problem?
Right.
Or make them duller, or push them around the corner a bit so they look somewhere else. Great idea. Do you want to take these back to George? And if you think the option's a bit weak, you can go, okay, that's one good option. What other options could there be? You can get 2 or 3 options for an item. That's not a problem. Just keep asking and driving the conversation that way. Because what you want to do is, when you come out of both private sessions, you want both parties to have fistfuls of options. Because if they've got options by the truckload, getting an agreement is easy. If they come out of the private sessions with, I don't know, getting an agreement is almost impossible. That's why we've got to understand each other's point of view in the exploration, so we can drive options which are reasonable, address the issues, and are doable. See, one leads to the other. If you talk in the exploration about the AFL football or something, you know, not on persons where they're coming from, anything else, they've got nothing to come forward with options into the private session. You can't give me an option for any problem unless you know all the circumstances around.
Circumstances, and that's what you do in the exploration and find out.
Yeah.
That is where
then when you
this empathy, understanding the other person's point of view.
Exactly.
Right, and let's explore. So what you're telling me, the other person, you know, Alicia's going to hear, and it may give her an insight into some of the things that you're experiencing, which we can then move forward on.
That sounds good to me. Yep. Now, in the private sessions, because it's just one-on-one, you can get really aggressive with options. Because they're not, in the exploration, if you start pushing options too soon, they're afraid that whatever they say may be like laughed at or just dismissed out of hand. So doing it with you, they're actually bouncing it off a neutral third party who doesn't give a shit either way, to be honest with you. So they're bouncing it off you. So, oh, what if we did this? That's a good idea. Why don't you put it back to George? Well, if it is a stupid idea, you go, okay, then you reality test it. What if this happens? What if that happens? Okay, what other options are there, do you think?
And when you talk about options, my thoughts were, rather than sort of options, I don't want to confuse them. I want to say, with regards to this agenda regarding fence or this, because I don't want it to slip into another area or field by focusing.
That's what we, as I said in the very beginning of this on the private session bit. So Sylvia, you've understand what George said about the lights. What options do you see to move forward regarding the lighting? Short sentence, that's all you got to do to get her thinking about solutions.
Yeah. Right.
If you rave on about, oh yes, and the security here and in your bedroom there, and repeat everything that's been said before, the clock's ticking.
Right.
Short, succinct, simple question. Okay, Sylvia, you've heard what George said about the security reasons for lights. What do you see as an option to move forward to solve this issue? And you use the word option, and you know, even say to the parties as well that, look, options are not necessary solutions, they're discussion points. From these discussion points can come solutions. So no option is valid or invalid, they're just options. So what options do you see to move forward with the lighting? And once you get 1 or 2 options, Great. With agenda item number 2, the fence. Okay. You understood, you can explain a little bit, not too much. You understood Manny's position on the fence? Not Manny, George's position on the fence. What solutions do you see there? Which would be cost effective to solve your problem? And be concerned about it, because you're asking the question and they'll go, oh, okay, well, how about if we do this or this? That's good. Will this work with that type of brickwork? Do all plants work harmoniously with bricks, or does some invasive and can cause damage? Is going to be any restrictions or anything? I don't know anything about plants. And they'll go, oh, yeah, you're right on that. Yeah, so got to be something which is non-invasive, maybe like whatever the breed of plant is. Okay, cool. We'll put that back to George. Last agenda item, this. What do you think? You're looking for options. And when you get all the options, you can then go, wow, okay, I've been here 10 minutes. Okay, I've been here now 10 minutes. That's really, really good. So I'd like to remind you once again, I can't take anything back, but you can. Now, you've discussed a few really good options I do recommend bringing back, because I think they're very, very good.
So you would, by suggesting they bring them back, I would sort of, so I'm not making any suggestions. Are there any points after our discussion that you think you may bring back? That way it prepares me for the questioning between the two. Is that an approach, or
every time they came up with an option, I say, would you like to take that back to the mediation with George? And they go yes or no. And if it's no, why no? If it's yes, go great, move on. So you've already done that. You don't have to replicate. Replicating becomes boring and tedious, and people disconnect when you do that. So you've gone through all the options. You've said, okay, I'd like to remind you once again, it's confidential. I can't take it back, but you can. And you've got a few good things to take back, which is fantastic. I'll now put you on hold and now talk to George for roughly the same amount of time. So use this time to freshen up, get a coffee, have a cigarette, whatever you want to do. Okay? Click, put them on hold, bring the other one back, and repeat. Rinse and repeat.
No.
So what you're doing there is the same thing, confidentiality. How's it going for you so far? Deal with that option generation. You heard what Sylvia said about the lights. How do you see moving forward with some sort of option to solve these problems for both of you? And do the exact same things. You're willing to take that back? Yes, I am. Great, fantastic. If not, why not? And by the time you finish, Sylvia and George have both got a fistful of options. What we've got to do now is just marry them together. And guess what? Done.
Because in the exploration stage, when you say you've heard what Sylvia had to say, look, Sylvia, you've heard what George had to say. They've actually been able to. You've actually been able to hear his point of view. What's your point of view in regarding a solution? This is in the private session.
Well, once you've finished both private sessions, what you say coming back is critical. The transition here is critical. And what's in the script, don't change. In my script, don't change the transition here. Over time, you might think of ways of improving it. That's great. But for the time being, leave it the way it is. And that is, as I mentioned before, the private sessions are confidential. I can't bring anything back, but you can. Now, is there anything either of you would like to discuss or bring back before we continue? Discuss or bring back before we continue. The reason you do that, if you say bring back and nothing but bring back, then a person is then put on the spot to bring stuff back. Discuss or bring back, there could be anything. So therefore, they're more likely to open up. If they've both got fistfuls of options and you go, is there anything like to discuss or bring back? And both of them go, no.
Oh, God.
Don't get upset. Don't get upset. Just go, okay, cool, not a problem. I'd like to remind everyone we're up to before we did the private sessions. We just finished discussing agenda item number 3, which was whatever it was. Now, moving on to the negotiation phase, agenda item number 1. Do either of you have any options you'd like to discuss about resolving the lighting issue? Then that's when one of them will bring it up. If they've both got solutions, guess what? One of them will bring it up.
And in this area, remember, you've just come out of the private session. If you said in your opening statement, or in our exploration phase before we went into the private session, one of the major issues was lights, George and Sylvia.
Mm-hmm.
Now, remembering, they've just said, no, we ain't got a solution. Now, remember, we're not there to give solutions. We're there to try to get the meeting of minds.
Correct.
And thus, if you both if there's that silence, and I think you said we need to discuss this, do I wind the mediation session up now, or do we continue? I've got to, we're supposed to wrap up in half an hour. Do I extend it for another half hour? Is that a segue?
We'll cover that a bit later. If you don't mind, we'll try and stay focused on the private sessions rather than segueing out here.
Yep.
When you come back out of the private sessions, usually people have solutions they really want to tell you. And if they don't do it there, when you put the question out, they will normally come in at that point. Mm-hmm. If they still sit there with their arms crossed going, nope, got no idea, well then maybe call another frigging private session. I mean, it's just...
So would you be wrong in what's your position on agenda item 1? Because then there must be in a positional situation. Would you ask the question, well, George, what's your position on agenda 1?
What are your thoughts on agenda 1 rather than position? Position becomes very black and white.
Yeah, well, yeah, okay.
And you see, when I bring stuff back, no, okay, cool. You want to bring stuff back? No, cool. Okay, agenda item number 1, options to move forward. Any sort of suggestions here? No, okay. Well, in that case, George, just pick on one random or the weak one. I don't care which one you pick on. Probably the weak one's a better way of going. Once again, to give the voice to them. Okay, Sylvia, with agenda item number 1 regarding this, what are your thoughts on this subject?
Turn the bloody light off.
Yeah, whatever. Okay, so an opening point for discussion. Great. But we can't force them to bring stuff back from the private session. And we can't say what was said in the private session or even hint towards what was said in the private session. Mm-hmm. We've got to be very new. You've got to come up with it. And look, they're there to solve the problem. And 99% of the time, they will come up with the options when they come out or when you directly ask them for that issue. They won't suddenly just clam up and stop talking to each other because they're now seeing a solution. They're seeing a light at the end of the tunnel. They're going to run for that light. They're not going to sort of pull the blinds down and ignore it. So you don't have to really worry about that per se. And that's the first sort of private session. The second sort of private session, and there is a second sort, is when you're doing the exploration, they come up with options and they all agree on everything before the private sessions. Mm-hmm. If they've totally agreed on everything before the private sessions, well, don't rub your hands together and say that's fantastic. It's not.
Right. What
we do here is we do the confidentiality, how's it going for you so far, and then we reality test their commitment to doing it. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of people, not a lot of people, but people will sometimes agree to anything because it's not legally enforceable just to get out of the space if they feel it's not working for them. Mm-hmm. They won't argue the point. They'll agree to everything so they can go home. And as they're going home, they tear up the agreement. Mm-hmm. So you've got to make sure if they agree too readily, okay, you don't challenge them on that. You say, okay, agenda item number 1, you both agreed to, shift the lights around a little bit so it doesn't shine in the bedroom but still shows the driveway, and you're going to lower the wattage by, 50% or something. It still gives sufficient light, but it's not going to be cause an issue to anyone. Now, George, that would require for you to actually replace the globes and do the adjustment. How committed you are to doing that? You can even just ask them, how committed to it are you? What's it going to cost or anything which could stop it from happening? What issues can you see if you do it? You can ask them minimum questions to try and make sure they are committed to moving forward. Mm-hmm. If you get a sniff that they're just trying to get out of there, you can then say, well, look, I get this bit of a sense that you're not that committed to the process. What's gone wrong? What's causing an issue? Mm-hmm. What can I do to help you solve that issue?
If using the word what can I do to solve? I'm not there. What can I do? Would you use the words facilitate a solution rather than solve?
No, no, not solving the solution. What I'm referring to here is that person's wanting to get out of the room.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah, he's wanting to get out of the room. He just wants to go home. He's just sick to death of the process. He wants out of there. Why? Why does he want out of there?
Right.
I don't think she's really serious about it, and I'm just feeling very whatever. Okay, how can we fix this so you can re-engage?
Right. Okay.
What can I do to help you to solve that?
Mm-hmm.
Not the issues on the agenda, but that person's issue in the room at that point.
Mm-hmm.
If we give up and go, oh, that's a fair cop, let's finish the mediation here, we're not doing our job.
Right.
We've got to find out what the issue that person's having is, and if we can, we fix it. If we can't, well, we maybe have to close the mediation.
Mm-hmm.
But you must be aware that if you've got agreements to everything before the private sessions, the chances are, not always, but the chances are that, yeah, someone's not committed to it.
Right. Okay. And what was that? That was that passive in one of the questions is that they're just abrogating. They're feeling just say yes so I can get out of here.
Well, you don't actually challenge them directly on that particular thing, but you say, like, you're sensing that, you're not really committed to the process. What's causing the problem? Do you mind me asking? Because I might be able to help you so we can re-establish the process.
And with each of the options that have come out, I've got questions like, how would that look like on a day-to-day basis?
That's good.
And then you say, if any, what would prevent these options from working? So you're teasing out before they leave what the issues could be, and then how is this going to affect others around you? Because that's also very important with regards to an agreement.
Now, with what I do, because I've got limited time, remember that you are time sensitive in the private session.
Yes.
I go for the options, and if they come up with something which sounds a bit like, Twilight Zone thing,
yep.
I'll then reality test a little bit to try and get them to realise that, maybe it's not the best option, maybe something else could be better.
Mm-hmm.
If I've got time left over, I might ask the questions you just mentioned, but normally it takes the whole 10 minutes to get that out.
Right, okay.
Now, when you come back and they're going through the options and they sort of say, oh yeah, well, how do we just, change the angle of the thing? If that works, great. If it doesn't, we'll leave it at changed angle, but lower the wattage a little bit. Okay, that sounds good. Who's going to pay for the change to wattage if that happens?
Mm-hmm.
That's a reality testing question.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When are you going to do this to see if it's going to cause an issue with the lighting for the bedroom and also the driveway? Because you've got to find that very fine balance.
Mm-hmm.
When's that going to happen? You can't do it during the day because you can't see the light and where it's shining. So it's got to be at night time. So when are we going to do this? When are we going to attune the lights? Date, time, agreement, You start reality testing as they bring the solutions up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you have a ton of time left over in a private session, yeah, you do a bit, yeah, for sure. But only do the ones which you think are a bit weak.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So now you've gone through and you reality tested it all to a certain degree. I mean, no, not deeply reality test, just the obvious reality test. You go, okay, look, this is fantastic. We've got 3 agenda items, and I think we've got options and agreement on the whole 3. Let's formalise this now.
Ken, before they've come up with this, and you ask it's this question answer consolidation. Andrew, how does Alicia solution sound to you? You bounce it back, so you've got affirmation. Again, trying to affirm this day's agenda point, so we can make sure that when we leave here, he said yes, I said yes, and they're both agreeing, and then we can move forward, and no one can come back.
That's true, but don't overthink it. Honestly, don't overthink it. When you say who's got a solution here, an option here, let's say Sylvia comes up and goes, yeah, well, how do we just change the angle a little bit, and if that sort of fix it, if it does, we can change the wattage and that should fix it. Mm-hmm. What do you think of that, George? Just plain and simple. What do you think of that, George?
Or is it practical for you? Well,
No, don't say it's practical. What do you think of that, George? Let him come up with that.
Okay. Okay.
Keep it simple. I mean, the old KISS formula works here. Keep it simple, stupid. If you put too many conditions on it, he'll find an exception to it. If you don't put conditions on, he'll go, oh, yeah, that sounds pretty good, but who's going to pay for the globes we've got to change because they're quite expensive. They're floodlights. They're not just ordinary house globes.
So what do you think, basically?
Well, what do you think would be fair then, George, if that's the case? Oh, well, look, you know, considering what we've spent so far, maybe 50-50. Would that be something acceptable to you, Sylvia? Sleep at night time, either yes or no. If it's yes, cool. But that's not a first thing. The first thing is to move them. And if that doesn't work, then we change the what if.
Yep. Okay. Yep.
If that's hypothetically their solution, because they might come to a totally different solution. Who knows?
Yep. Yep.
But anyway, for what it's worth, that's how you can challenge that. If there's a cost involved, okay, who's going to pay for that?
Right. Yep.
Oh, it's only cheap, I'll pay for it, not a problem. Oh, shit, that's a bit of money. Maybe go halves in it. Whatever, you can let them discuss it. But you're not trying there to find, okay, if this happens and that doesn't happen and this is caused by that on a full moon on the 13th of a Friday, what's your opinion on that, George? I mean, of course he's going to find something negative to say. You know, one of those factors you've mentioned is going to be, oh, yeah, I never thought of that. That's a problem. Yeah, then forget that idea. Don't come up with the negatives, but then let him come up with them. If he comes up with them, we deal with them because it's his idea. You're coming up with the negatives is your opinion once again. You can reality test, that's not a problem, but stacking a question and asking the person, that's a problem. I'd ask simple questions. I wouldn't ask complex questions. I ask simple folk after all, and they're under a lot of stress.
Yep.
Everyone's simple folk. I mean, we don't want to have a question which is, you know, a paragraph long because we can't answer that. We've got to keep it short, keep it simple, one thing at a time. So what do you think of Sylvia's solution? Oh, that's pretty good. You see any downfalls? Generic question. Oh, no, that could work. I never knew the damage it was causing, but I'm a bit concerned I've got to replace the globes. They're like, you know, $10 each. That's a lot of money. What do you see as a solution there then, Jordan? Why don't we go halves each and there's two of them? Sylvia, are you up for that? Yeah, cool. $10, nothing to be able to sleep over night time. Cool. Let's move on to the next one. Or how would you like me to document that? And just document it. Use their wording. And once you've got the thing finished, generically speaking, we're doing it by computer here, you're doing it on a Word document. You can start looking at some of the time scales and who's going to do what, and you know, make it so there's a proper action plan for each item, not just we'll move the light. Well, when are we going to move the light? Who's going to be doing it? What if that doesn't work? What's the next option? Change globes. Okay, who's going to buy the globes? When are they going to be changed over? When it's going to be tested? You got to step each one through so everyone knows exactly what they're doing. Then once you've got that documented, I would then always ask something like, well, I'm just curious. I love the word I'm curious because it's just a personal thing. It's not official. Yeah, I'm curious. If another issue pops up in the future, how are you going to handle it? How are you going to negotiate it? Or are you going to go to mediation? Oh, well, look, I think our communications will be fixed when this is all done. So maybe we can just, you know, talk about over the fence for a cup of coffee. What do you think of that, Sylvia? Yeah, look, I'd like to go back to those days when we used to have those cups of coffee. I miss them. Fantastic. Fifth point, or whatever it is on the agreement. Any future issues that arise, both George and Sylvia will meet to discuss them over a cup of coffee or whatever. Put that in the agreement so they've got something to come back to. So once that's done, okay, I'd like to remind you here that this agreement is not legally binding, but I do want you to sign it. Still doesn't make it legally binding, but it gives you something you can work towards. It shows a bit of a commitment by signing it, but it's not legally binding. Okay.
So you actually, because yesterday, on Tuesday, I had a mediation, well, it was a sort of a compulsory conference, which was confidential, but at the end of it, we had a settlement agreement, which we signed, which became a legally binding document.
That's a court thing. It's not one of our things.
Right, okay.
Do you know why it's not a legally binding agreement?
Well, because I think under the Act, where well, not under the Act, you mentioned that it's that it can't be raised in the agreement that they sign. It can't be raised in a court proceedings.
It can be, and maybe some weights put on it, but it's not a legal document because it doesn't meet the criteria of a contract.
Right.
With a contract, you've got offer and acceptance, and you've got all the wonderful things and parts to it. It does not meet that. This is just a little agreement between two people. It is not a contract, therefore it is not legally enforceable.
It's an agreement, not a contract.
Yeah, basically. If you write up as a contract with offer and acceptance and all the terms and conditions and everything, then it can be considered a legal document. However, you can't charge for that because only solicitors can charge for writing up contracts.
Okay, so what you do is...
you don't write up as a contract. You explain to them that this is an agreement between the two of you, which is not legally binding. And the reason we signed it is so we can express our commitment to each other.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And they go, okay, that's cool, that's cool. Okay, so it's not legally binding. Now, if there's anything in here which is of an issue to you, I do recommend legal advice. That's up to yourself. We've covered all the reasons we've come here for. Is there a need for another mediation?
Mm-hmm.
The reason we ask that is because two things. Number one, it gives them an opportunity to put something into effect for a trial period and then see how the trial goes. And if it's not working too good, do another mediation.
Mm-hmm.
If it's working fine, they can keep going with it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's mainly not for things like this, but it's mainly to do with things like parenting issues and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things that stop people coming to an agreement in a parenting environment is the fact that they believe that once they agree to something, they're committed to it forever.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you make a mistake and agree to something which later on turns out to be not in the best interest of you or the children, you'll regret that something chronically. So people err on safety here and don't like doing parenting plans on that particular issue.
Mm-hmm.
So what you do then is you say, well, look, okay, how about we do an interim agreement where this is put into effect for, say, 1, 2, 3 months, whatever you think is appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see how it goes. And if it all works fine, we can meet again in mediation and formalise it so we can then go forward. If it's not fine, we can renegotiate that and we can put that into a trial as well.
Mm-hmm.
The trial people will agree to, but to do it for the rest of the 18 years while that kid's growing up is a bit of a different story. Now, sometimes that applies in the commercial world and neighbourhood world, but not that often, but it does apply sometimes that people may not wish to agree to jumping through these hoops because if it doesn't work, then they're stuck with doing it forever.
Mm-hmm.
So we can say, well, we can make it a trial. We'll do it for like a month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever you think is appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
Then we can meet back here in a mediation and we can see how it's going. And if it's working fine, we can document it accordingly. If it's not working fine, we can renegotiate it.
Okay.
Well, that's a great idea. I'll do that. Yeah. So we'll have another mediation in, 2 months' time then?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, Sylvia? Yeah, 2 months sounds good with me. Okay, well, book the time and date now.
Mm-hmm.
And the second reason is, cha-ching, another mediation for you.
Yep.
But the real reason is to give them the flexibility of knowing that even though they've come to an agreement, it's not in stone yet. It's an agreement in principle. Let's give it a go, see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And if it works, woohoo. And if it doesn't work, let's rearrange it so it does work and we keep doing it until we do get it to go.
Yep, okay.
Then you go, any questions about the process so far? No questions. All well, fine and dandy. Great. Okay, I'd like to really congratulate both of you coming to such a great agreement. And I'd like to remind you once again, everything is confidential. Except for the exclusions we mentioned before at the beginning. And I'd like to thank you again and congratulate you again and say, see you later.
With regards to that, we've got an agreement. So expressing it so that, and clear in their mind. Again, try to keep it simple. This doc, it's, thank you. You've come to you've come and you've come to this agreement.
Mm-hmm.
No, it is not a legal agreement. It is a commitment to move forward and keep it as simple as that. Is that correct?
Yeah. It's basically, you don't have to sign it, but I do recommend people sign it as a show of their commitment to do the process. But it is not legally binding, even if signed.
And
The
thus,
courts may view it and consider it, but
Mhm.
they don't have to agree to it.
Okay. And thus, if you want to take it to your advisor, it would be on that basis.
And if you want to make it legally binding, then you have to see a solicitor who can convert this into a legally binding document,
Yep.
which will then bind you to it.
Yep. Okay. Yep. Good. Yep.
Give them the answers on it. Now I'm going to pause the video just for about a minute or two again. Just hang on a sec. So just recapping on the whole thing.
Yep.
We do our opening statements.
With pauses.
With pauses, and we use the tone to our advantage. We try and build rapport during that stage. Remember, we had them for an intake beforehand, so they know about us.
Yep.
Then after that, we do their opening statements. Now we ask them the questions, we summarise, and we build an agenda from this. So we build a accurate, succinct, specific agenda which does address all their issues. Without that, they're wasting their time because fluff will give you no answer. You've got to be very specific in the agenda. If the dog yapping is an issue, it's got to be there.
Yep.
Somewhere, even if it's buried with something else like fence or whatever. It's got to be there. It's got to be addressed. We then have the agenda. We put the agenda up, explain where it comes from. We say, is there anything missing? We get the order organised. We congratulate them on that, which is setting up a yes letter. We then do the exploration. The exploration is all about understanding why that's an issue to the other party. I've got to know why it's a problem to you, and you've got to understand why it's a problem for me. And we can come up with solutions which are mutually acceptable. If I don't understand your problems, how can I make something mutually acceptable? So if the exploration is all about talking about the fence height and nothing else, then how are they going to agree on anything? So once we've done that, we then go into the private sessions. The private sessions is where we drill into and try and get options up. So fistfuls of options that come out of that. Once we've got those options all sorted out, we can then, come back into the negotiation phase where we encourage them to bring these options on the table and to come to an agreement on what's good and bad. Then we document it and it's all finished. So it just flows through nicely.
Okay.
If you can see how the flow works there, it's just magic. But when you do things, well, not you, but when a mediator does stuff like ask, wish-washy questions, doesn't get a good agenda, then the exploration on not good is not good. And going to private sessions, not good gives you not good options or no options. Coming out of the private sessions with no options means you've got your work cut out for you because they're positional. If you don't do the exploration to the whys, they'll dig in positionally.
Right.
So that's core to getting over positional statements. Now, if someone's positional in the private session, the way you get around is to say to them, why is that important to you? Why is it important that the fence is exactly 5'6" high? Oh, because, and they'll tell you. Well, you can even play devil's advocate. What if it's 5'7" or 5'5"? Would it still meet the job? Yeah. So there's some flexibility. Oh, yeah. Cool. You see what Sylvia wants. How do we get a solution here?
How can we meet in the middle?
No, yes.
That's a solution, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, you don't ask for middle because that's telling them to compromise, and compromise is not what it's about, even though it's what they do to a certain degree. Because, look, let's face it, the lighting issue, hypothetically, can be solved just by moving it. It's not a compromise. It either moves or it doesn't move. So you can't compromise on that. You can't have one light move and not the other one because it's still shining in the bedroom. There's no compromise there. Either it moves or it doesn't. Either it's lower wattage or it's not. Either they put up a thing to stop the thing going in the house or not. Whatever the solution they come up with, it either is a solution or it's not.
Mm.
So compromise comes in more so when we're talking about things like how much of a will you get.
Yeah, okay.
I think I'm entitled to all of it because Mum left it to me. That's her wishes, not my wishes, her wishes. I want 100%. So, that's when a compromise will be sort of negotiated. Once again, the whys come into it. Why is it important to you that you get a percentage of the will?
Mm.
Because, look, I'm the daughter too. We did have a small argument and it sort of, ruined it for that time. But before that, there was never any issues. It's just that last few months and all of a sudden I'm being, crucified for it. It's just not fair. I mean, and you can say in a private session, the other party, let's reverse the roles. How would you feel if the other sister got all the thing and you got the car?
Mm-hmm.
I'd be horrified.
Yeah.
How do you think your sister's feeling? Horrified. What do you think we can do to solve this?
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe if I give her, I don't know, she needs some money, so I'll give her some money, I'll keep the super and, keep the house and whatever. That sounds great. When it takes that back to her. Whatever they come up with, if it's towards a solution, encourage them to take it back, because when they take it back and they start discussing it, that's when it'll become valid or not valid.
Mm-hmm.
Until then, you can't say that's valid or not valid. Only the other person can.
Mm.
So we encourage the thinking outside the position itself and why that position is important. We try and break it down. We can do role reversals, which is a very good way of handling those.
Mm-hmm.
If your sister got it all and you didn't, how would that feel to you?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'd be devastated. You don't have to say anything more, because now all of a sudden they're putting themselves in their sister's shoes.
Yep.
So how can we solve this? Well, I need the money for this, this, and this. Well, how much do you need? I need this much. Okay, that leaves X. Well, what can we do with X? Go halves in it? Okay, you want to take that back?
Yep.
I mean, we're asking questions like, what do you think of this? How would you solve that? What we're not saying, you should do this and you should do that. No. We're asking them to come up with what they think.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, Matt, you just don't overthink it. We're here to facilitate.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to ask the questions, which we do. We summarise, which we do. We do the agenda, which we do. Then we get them to work by exploring each other's point of view.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We then drive options. We get the options. We knit them together. We come up with an agreement, and don't let the door hit you on the way out. Done.
Yep.
And each one is required. The other one happens. That's why I did it backwards to start with. To get this agreement, you need the options. To get the options, you've got to know the whys. To get the whys, you've got to have an accurate agenda. To have an accurate agenda, you've got to question, summarise, and make the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
So going backwards, you can see why each step is important.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
So that's the whole aim of the mediation process. And when it clicks, you get the aha, it's magic. It really is. And then you find that your whole life and the way you question people and the way you talk to people changes.
Well, Ken, it was quite interesting on Tuesday. The member at VCAT...
I will stop. I'll pause this now because we don't want this on a recording.
Okay.